Good evening and welcome to another edition of Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Derbyologist, and joining me again this week is Capping with Candace, Candace here. Candace, this week we're going to go to Florida. We've got the Swale Stakes for the 3-year-old boys. We've also got a nice Palm Beach turf race, and then we're going to go back out west for the fillies. Let's start it off with the Swale. For a couple of weeks, we've known about a couple of horses pointing for this race. This used to be an actual prep for the Derby, but anymore it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, it seems like we don't really know. We get some horses who are nominated coming here and using it kind of as a stepping stone, maybe going sprint to route in their campaigns. But more than anything, a lot of times it just seems like we get horses who are on the cutback who maybe, didn't figure in some of the routes and are cutting back to this more, flattering sprint distance for some of these horses. We do get Daredevil back here who, really made a statement in the Champagne over that sloppy track at Belmont. Didn't go quite as well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and that's really, that was a weird race, but there were some horses up on the speed who were able to stay on, and he wasn't one of them, which does downgrade him a little bit in my eyes, but he has been working bullets leading up to this race, so you expect him to have a good effort, and over 7 furlongs, that's well within his range. He draws the rail. And as a horse with legitimate speed, you think he's going to be the one that they're going to have to catch here. For me, though, I'm going to take the horse on the outside in this race, XY Jet. He's had a couple good races in a row, both at 7 furlongs. He finished second by a neck to Catalina Red, and in that race, he got run down late there, but he did bobble at the break, so he had a little bit of trouble at the start, and that race was labeled as Timeform as a track that very much favored closers, and he had been on the lead the whole time too, so maybe the track didn't totally play in his favor. Came back in the Hutchison, I thought, ran a really nice second behind Barbados, who really ran a monster race that day. So he's going to come from the outside. I expect him to kind of track Daredevil along the track, and he'll get one run at him, and we'll see if he's good enough. But I think he's going to be a square price in here with Daredevil in the field. So I'm going to take XY Jet.
Yeah, I think in a 7 furlong race, you know you're going to get your speed. Ready for Rye has proven that he can set some fast fractions. XY Jet has got some speed if he needs to be on the lead, but he can also rate a little bit. I think it puts Daredevil in a tough spot. I'm going to go with Super Colossal. A couple of reasons. You know, he ran a really nice race down at Monmouth last year. And then a lot of people forget, yeah, he was part of the speed duel in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. But 4 days before that race, he worked out a 57 flat. And I think this is actually a good horse. I think this is a horse that's actually pointing for the Florida Derby. The trainer's being really non-committal about it because I think he's just holding his cards and he's just saying, yeah, we're going to go here. But, that turf prep was a great prep. Now he goes 7. He can come off the pace, face some speed. And I think it sets it up 2 sprints and then stretch out in the Florida Derby. And I really like the pedigree. And I just think that he actually ran solid till the turn as part of that 7-horse scrum. He was actually between the horses. And that 57 workout and a nice race last year. And I think he's got a good shot here to actually come from off the pace. And that's what 7 furlongs, I always like the cutbackers.
Yes, that tends to be what I normally go through. The horse, the XY Jet I'm picking here, has ran 7 furlongs twice in a row. But if given the option of a horse stretching out or a horse cutting back, I'm the same way. I kind of like the ones cutting back versus the stretch out. Super Colossal, one thing I'll mention, because I mentioned with Daredevil that, I have a tough time kind of swallowing that Breeders' Cup Juvenile with him because some horses did stay on who were up in front on that pace. Super Colossal, I'm much more willing to forgive because if I remember right, he stumbled at the start and rushed up to the lead. His race was over there. So I'm a lot more willing to forgive that. The one thing I will say is he is one who tends to have trouble with the starts. He's had trouble stumbling out of the gate a few times now, so that's going to be something he's not going to look forward to have here with so much speed signed on.
What about Daredevil? Is your gut instinct he's a Derby type horse, or do you think he's just a sprinter like Havana last year?
I think he's a sprinter. I expect him to run well here. I'm more kind of setting against him just because I don't think his price is going to be indicative of how much better he is than the horses in this field. I expect him to be absolutely hammered in this race, and I think it's a pretty competitive field, which is why I'm looking elsewhere. But I do expect him to run well here. I just don't see him stretching out, and I mean, everybody who likes him seems to be really pointing to that Champagne, but that just screams slop-aided win to me. So it's hard for me to take him seriously routing over a dry track.
Yeah, for Daredevil, for me, it's just I really don't know what he is. He won 2 races in the slop. Both times he was favored, a big favorite. And then he had the 13th post in the Breeders' Cup. So to me, after this race, I'll actually be able to form more of an opinion if it's at least a fast track. The Palm Beach Stakes traditionally draws the best turfers in Florida, and this year the field doesn't disappoint again.
Yeah, I thought last year in particular ended up being a really key race. I think I held on to that form on this show for months and months and months, and it worked out pretty well for me. We'll see if that happens the same this year, but I do really like this field. The first thing I noticed though is there is no speed in here at all, like very, very small amount of speed. Dubai Sky likes to go forward, but aside from that, I just don't see much. And I'm actually really intrigued, and this will be the second time I think I've picked him, but I'm really intrigued by Decision Day, who ran in the Holy Bull, didn't do anything there. That was his first try on the dirt. He had won 2 out of 3 over the all-weather up in Woodbine. So now switching him to the turf, he's drawn outside. I think he's going to be forced to go forward in a race that doesn't have much speed at all. And he's a horse who's shown that he has the ability to win on the lead and not necessarily going super slow, though I don't think anyone other than Dubai Sky is really going to push him. And he's run over further than this. So Decision Day is when I think a lot of people might ignore him coming off of that really bad effort last time, but now going dirt to turf with the horse with that synthetic form, he's really intriguing to me in this race given that there is so little speed in here. So I'm going to take him on top. I do also like Dubai Sky. That race that he ran, beating Cordier and the Kitten's Joy, I thought was really telling of his talent, and he's one who I'm looking at going forward as far as the 3-year-old turfers are concerned.
A horse that got quite a bit of buzz when he won as a long shot in his debut was Diversity Darrow. What do you think about him?
He's interesting. I really like that race visually. I just struggle with him in here because there's no speed. And he, at least in there, he came from really far back. So I don't know what to do with him. I think he's going to get some play here being a Kitten's Joy. And that's a little tough. I think I'm more looking to some of the more seasoned horses in here, like Decision Day, like Dubai Sky, like even like a Night Prowler who won the Dania Beach. Some of those who have a little more seasoning under the belt and have shown a little bit more tactical speed, because I think that's going to be necessary in this field.
The horse I ended up going with was El Campari, I believe is how it's pronounced. And he had a kind of a memorable maiden win last summer on the dirt on a race watched off the turf. And then he went kind of over his head in the Remsen. But the last race, he had a little bit of a rough trip. I am worried about the speed. But this horse kind of has the pedigree for turf, and I think that last trip was kind of going to dirty him up a little bit. So I think the odds will be right, and the trainer just struck with a 20-1 last week in a stakes race at the fairgrounds, and he won with a maiden horse last year for me at 30-1 at the Gulfstream. So he kind of is under the radar. He doesn't have a lot of horses, and so I'm just going to go with El Campari and hope the price is right. Maybe he can get in the top 3.
Yeah, and this looks to be, a wide open field, I think, for the most part, a very competitive field. And, we saw last year a lot of horses come out of this race to win stakes races. And we saw Mr. Speaker came out of this race and won the Belmont Derby. So even horses who don't win, this is a really good race, given the 3-year-old turfers schedule going forward, to keep an eye on some of the horses closing late who maybe want more ground and using them later on in the year as well.
Let's go out west. 3-year-old fillies, the Santa Ysabel, drew a field of 8 horses, and I thought an evenly matched field. I think people are going to be betting on potential here more than what they've got in the form.
Yeah, and this is a race that there's a couple I think you can see that'll take money. I expect Enchanting Lady to take a lot of money for Bob Baffert, especially coming off that big win over Seduir last time that she ran. Now, it's been a while since she's ran, but she's one who, from day one, she's been hyped and everybody's known how good she is. And coming in here with some fast works, I expect her to take quite a bit of money. The other one I expect to be heavily bet is Curlin's Fox, who went off it extremely. She was bet like a good thing going down the hill in her main special weight. Won really easily there, much easier than the margin of victory would suggest. So those are the two who I think will take the most money. And I expect them to be competitive. Just in a field like this, I'm more willing to look elsewhere at some horses who I think might be, at least a little bit ignored. I mean, the one who I'm going to go with here on top is Light the City, and for the most part, she's gone off at short prices, but she went off at 7:30 last time, and think that she'll be, your third or fourth choice in this field. And she finished second in the Lost Virginist last time out behind Callback, and in that race, she traveled much further than Callback. She traveled 50 feet further than her, and she still finished about 2 seconds quicker in the final eighth than Callback. By far the fastest final eighth of anybody in that field, despite going so wide. To me, it's clear she wants further. She's street chance out of an APND mare. I think she's one who's going to relish over this further trip. So I'm going to take her on top in the spot.
Yeah, I got it down to two horses. The first one I want to talk about is Glory. I'm a big believer now that we don't have as many synthetic surfaces. I always loved when we did have it. I always called it the synthetic to dirt bounce. And so I like the fact that she broke her maiden. She beat a nice horse that day who came back to just romp in a maiden special weight race. Then they went to Golden Gate, and it's very hard to wire a route race, especially at 8.5 furlongs at Golden Gate. She led every step of the way, lost in the final strides. Now she goes back to the dirt. She's got the pedigree. I think I just like her in this spot. She's not my top pick, but I think she's going to run well, Glory. And then Enchanting Lady, yes, she had kind of a key race last summer, but I've actually had a chance. HRTV and TVG have filmed a couple of her workouts, and I've just been majorly impressed. A nice 7 furlong workout in 127. So I'm going to pick Enchanting Lady. I think she's going to take a lot of money, but I really think that this is a pretty nice filly, and I've had her in my stable mail ever since last summer, and been just every week seeing these workouts pop up and wondering when she was going to race. So I think the tote board will tell a lot. If she's hammered down at the windows, I think she's live. If she's like 4-1, that means she's probably not live. But I do think Glory, people are going to take that Golden Gate race as a negative, and I'm taking it as a positive.
Yeah, and maybe one more to mention. Perhaps not as a win threat. Maybe she's really the wild card in this race. The Stellar Wind broke her maiden over at Laurel by over 8 lengths, going a mile. And it's funny because we look at those races, and obviously those, a Laurel maiden special weight is not the class of what some of these horses have been going with at Santa Anita, but her races weren't bad by any means. She finished third on debut, and both the horses who beat her went on to win 2 races in a row. The second place finisher in there, Gypsy Judy, went on to win a stakes race over at Laurel. Spotted Heart finished 4th in that same stakes, who was the winner in that maiden special weight. So maybe that was a little bit of a key maiden special weight over there at Laurel. Stellar Wind came back, like I said, to win by over 8 lengths, going a mile. So, what she beat in that race, we don't know, but whatever it was, she totally crushed it. Shows up here, has a solid work tab for John Sadler. Blinkers off. I mean, her pedigree curling out of a Malibu mare. She clearly wants this distance, and she's one of the horses in here who has routed. Several of these were kind of stretching out for the first time, so not sure what to expect of her or make of her in this race, but maybe someone to include on the bottom ends of your trifectas as kind of a wild card shot in here.
And yeah, right now the title of America's Favorite Maiden is still Battle Red, but Donette is second place, and she's entered against winners again in this spot, Drew the Rail.
I mean, she's so tough, and the thing is, some of these races, like her last race, that main special weight where she lost to Popover, she never had a chance in there. I mean, the speed they went in that race, she was so far back. At the second call, I think she was over 7 lengths back. She was never going to make that up going the speed they were going. I can't see her winning here, but I mean, I don't know what you do with the horse like this that is competitive in graded stakes races but can't seem to win at the main special weight level. I guess you just try here. I don't know what else you do.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, as we saw a couple of weeks ago with a horse like Kozan, and we saw that day Popover was 4-5, 3-5. She wasn't Popover was all in. Everybody knew she was going to win, and she won. Like, Donette was not going to win that race. In some ways, that was a stakes race for Popover. So Donette actually does stand she actually gets more horses. There's more pace. She drew well, and she probably will finish in the top 4. And if we ever get her in Battle Red against each other, I guess we'll find out who could break their maiden.
I mean, maybe she's one of these that she kind of runs to her competition level or something, because it seems like, grade twos, grade one, she's competitive, and why she can't win on the drop down, I don't know. It's a mystery to me, but maybe it's because she is one who's always struck me as being very pace dependent, and she's got to get the right setup no matter where she's at.
All right. Well, this week is next week we get the big prep out west with the San Felipe, and we get a chance maybe to see Bolo on the dirt. And what are your quick thoughts on the Spiral Stakes? The Great War faces a little bit tougher competition this time.
Oh, the Battaglia?
Battaglia, yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, you know that I've been a fan of Fire Spike since the beginning, so I think he's going to give him a little bit of a fight. I mean, he's a horse. He's the type of horse that if Great War is as good as people think he is, he should handle him. But he's going to make you earn it. I mean, he comes off that win over at the OBS last time out, a nice win, and he won a nice race over at Calder. So I think Fire Spike's going to give him a little more than people think he is. Royal Sun going over there onto the synthetic. We'll see if that maybe sparks a little bit of improvement with him. I just think the last race that he won, he didn't beat anything. And this is going to be a little bit better than that. But I still, like, the Great Moor to me, it's really hard for me to think better of him than I did by his Breeders' Cup Juvenile run. I was really impressed with him that day. I don't know what he can do in this race that would make me like him more. But, it's one of these, he's got to go in, he's got to win, move on. You can't lose here.
Yeah, for the Great War, I agree with you. He has to win, but I also agree with you. Fire Spike is a good test for him. He's not a grade one horse, but on this surface, Fire Spike's going to run well, and that's what last time he really got nothing out of that race. He almost wanted to get a little bit tested this time.
Well, and he's drawn out wide, so we'll see too. I mean, I don't know how Turfway's going to play that day. Sometimes it's good to be wide, but also Turfway's a track that can play kindly to closers, and Fire Spike comes from off the pace, so if it's that type of a track that day that flatters him more, like I say, he's the type of horse the Great War should handle, but he's going to make him work for it, and that's what you want to see when you're looking for horses on the Derby Trail.
Should be good. There's lots of great allowance races and some key maiden races this weekend, so a few of those horses may get one shot in that final round of preps, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Down to the Wire.